Hello and welcome to the Financial Goddess channel. Today we're going to talk about the federal budget 2020 and we'll mainly focus on the financial empowerment of women, as in what is specifically in that budget for women's economic security. That's a statement that government issues every year, and it's something that we're particularly looking forward to, taking into consideration that it is a year of federal election and that the federal budget kickstarts the federal political campaign. Before we dive into the details of what is on offer in the current budget for women in particular, I want to take it one step back and explain to you a little bit about the federal budget process. Because this is the year of the federal election, the federal budget that the government has announced last night, it is only a proposal provided that the same government gets re-elected in what we expect to be elections held in May of 2022. In the event that the Labour government gets elected instead, they will have their own budget with their own focus. That means some of the ideas they might keep, they might let go of. It's anyone's guess. Mr. Albanese has to prepare the response to the federal budget by tomorrow night, which I look forward to hearing. However, that's not the same as Labour's budget, so it shouldn't be mistaken as such. It is simply an opinion in relation to the Liberals' budget that has been presented last night. The Labour now has until 14th of May to prepare their own version of a budget, meaning how would you spend the Australian people's money? What are your areas of priority? So that's something that is important to bear in mind as we are discussing what's in this federal budget, because it's not set in stone. It's under the assumption that this government will continue. I will do a whole series on the different aspects of the budget, how it affects individuals, how it pertains to small to medium-sized businesses and families, looking at the deep dive of what's in it for different groups, what's put through as the media propaganda versus what it means in real terms, and to help you to understand really, truly, what's in it for you outside of media highlights and campaign slogans. So let's start with my main focus, which today is looking at the financial empowerment of women. If we look into the context of the current situation, this budget is prepared as a recovery budget, what is supposed to be post-pandemic period. Now, we all know that throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, for numerous reasons, women were affected a lot more than men on a greater scale. For example, it is most women that had to take over the caring responsibilities, and in particular, the homeschooling of the children, both during the lockdown periods and during the self-isolation periods. We also know that in terms of the rate of pay, on average, women's wages are 25% less than that of their male counterpart in the same profession and given the same level of experience, qualifications, and training. From personal experiences dealing with a lot of small to medium-sized female clients, many women had the impossible task of restructuring their businesses or completely letting go of their business ideas due to the lack of accessible and affordable childcare. Furthermore, the industries that historically and predominantly are female dominated, such as childcare, carers, aged care, disability sector, education, and healthcare, and especially healthcare, especially nurses that were on the front line of the pandemic. These were the jobs that were most effective during the pandemic in terms of cut down in work hours or complete loss of income. This compounds with the effect of women's mental health issues, increase in relationship breakdowns, including the significant increase in divorce rates during the pandemic period, and what is well known and established as an area of focus of domestic violence issues that were at an increased level during the pandemic. We also know that an unfortunate positive outcome of the current war situation means that the price of commodities have gone up, which portrays to make Australian budget look even better. As such, the expectation going into the budget was that there would be a lot of opportunities to create long-term solutions to ensure that the women are feeling financially empowered and financially independent. So let's have a look at what the government is actually proposing as specific measures for women. There's really two key points that the government is selling as part of their campaign. One is $1.3 billion to help address the issues of domestic violence against women and children. And the other one is to encourage more women to go into trades. On the surface value, the $1.3 billion that the government has allocated to domestic violence issues for women and children seems like a good starting point. However, one of the key areas where the $1.3 billion will go towards is funding a national consent campaign. This, I feel, is the highest misappropriation of funds. If I was a male in Australian society, I would actually be offended by the government's proposal. Because the proposal to fund a national consent campaign indicates that the government doesn't have faith in our male citizens, that the government doesn't believe that our male citizens know right from wrong, or that they know consent. They need to have an education campaign in relation to consent. I don't think that's the problem. I'm not sure about you, but from personal experiences of living with domestic violence and from speaking and working closely with women in our community who have suffered domestic violence, consent awareness is not an issue. Even more so, we have a lot of respectable males in our society, business leaders, community leaders, that should be deeply offended by how these funds are going to be spent. The number one issue that women face when they deal with domestic violence is the lack of financial independence and the lack of financial resources to get out of that situation. That is number one. And there is nothing in that budget that will create better opportunities for women, that will give them more resources to be able to escape that situation. We have a lot of underlying issues within our system where if you live at home with your husband, your Centrelink income, your childcare benefits, your after school care, before school care, school holidays is all financially dependent on what yours and his income combined. It does not give women the power to look at the evidence of what the husband's income is, or for the husband's employer to provide that information directly to women. It doesn't take into consideration the fact that the man could be gambling, have alcohol or drug addiction, and women and children never see that money. It doesn't take into the consideration that the man might not necessarily give women the correct figure of what his gross earnings are. Yet, it makes the women financially liable for any underdeclarations and overpayments. There is your first piece of the puzzle. The financial dependence of women on the men. Furthermore, there is a lot of great organizations out there that are providing humanitarian resources to women, that are providing them with shelter, trauma counseling, and other services to assist the women to escape the domestic violence. However, during the period of pandemic of COVID-19, the demand for the services has significantly increased. Once again, I have not seen anything in the budget to provide additional funding to those organizations that are looking after the women trying to escape domestic violence. Furthermore, our legal system in that area is broken. When the woman goes to file a complaint in relation to the domestic violence, that crime goes through the same process of investigation as any other crime. Meaning, a woman files a statement, police will arrest the perpetrator, question him about it, if there's insufficient evidence, release him back into the same house where both her and the children reside. This will be a number one reason why many women that live in those situations that fear for their life will not go and make a report. Furthermore, there has been numerous articles circulating through the media that would suggest that police need further specialized training in understanding and dealing with domestic violence, which is very different nature of crime than any other crime. Our legal system is very much evidence-based. When the violence takes place behind closed door, the only witnesses are the husband, the wife, and maybe the children. It becomes his hearsay, his word against her word. From personal experiences and those of many other women, having bruising on you is not sufficient evidence for the police, because it's an evidence that you got hurt, but it's not evidence linking the accused directly to the crime. I could go on and on and on. The myriads of issues and complications. However, that's not the purpose of my video today. That's not the focus of my video today. All it goes back to, nothing in the government's budget out of the $1.3 billion that is allocated to dealing with the issue of domestic violence, addressing the issue of domestic violence for women and children. I have not seen anything in that budget that will provide for additional resources or training for the police officers. I haven't seen anything for the myriads of not-for-profit organizations that are at the front line of helping women deal with these issues. I haven't seen any funding or any proposals in relation to making childcare more accessible, to making childcare more affordable for women. There's a lot of talk about women going back into the workforce. Government even created Parent Next program that harasses women of small children to force them into the pathways of employment. But there's nothing that talks about the childcare. The only thing is, if you have more than one child under the age of 5 in childcare, there is something in the current budget for you. What about when you have older children? What about if you have children primary school age or high school age and a child in childcare? You miss out completely. Now, what about the 36 million that is to encourage women to go into trade? Last year's focus was to encourage women to go into sciences and technology. I don't believe that women need encouragement to go into these professions. I think that women are more than capable to deciding and choosing their own path and their career. It's not the encouragement that the women need. What we need is equal pay. What we need is flexible work hours. What we need is accessible and affordable childcare, after school care, before school care, holiday school care. What we need is guaranteed safety in the workplace. No bullying, no sexual harassment, no violence against women. What we need is for women to be given equal opportunities to excel into the roles of leadership, and to acknowledge that the traditional leadership model has its weaknesses as much as its strengths, and a woman leadership style that is different can actually be beneficial to the operations of the business. What we need is to ensure that women have equal opportunity to progress through their careers, regardless of their parenting or carer's responsibility. What we need is to ensure that women get paid the same amount of money as their male counterparts for the same role if they have the same level of qualifications and experience. We need more than just words from government. Women are the ones that have predominantly carried the economy of the last 2 years. Every woman have taken on a greater burden of trying to juggle home responsibilities, homeschooling children, while working from home in the myriads of Zoom conferences and extra demands from the workplace. It is women that have taken on the decisions, an extremely difficult decision, to exit the workforce because it no longer was cost effective, nor did it make sense, nor was it long-term sustainable over the 2-year period to be able to operate a business or work in any responsible role while looking after children who needed homeschooling either due to lockdowns or the 7-day entire household self-isolation rules that were applicable. It is the women that carried the economy through. Whilst I acknowledge that there's plenty of fathers and husbands that did help out, majority of the burden was carried by the women. Yet in this budget, the government doesn't seem to value the women's efforts. This budget further shows the disconnect between the women's experiences and the way government sees forward. It feels like it has been done with no consultation with the community that it affects the most, which is the women. I'm very disappointed at the little value that this budget represents. Even more so, when I compare and contrast that to the investment in trades and construction that has been predominantly male-dominated industry. But in the last year's budget and in this year's budget, there's been a lot of support given to the construction and trades industries. I don't see the same being given to our healthcare system, to our hospitals, to our doctors and nurses that were at the front line of the pandemic. I don't see extra resources and extra funding being allocated to them. We are expected to live with COVID-19. New variants are coming about. We're heading towards flu seasons. Yet it appears that the funding for the healthcare has actually been cut, not even maintained at the current levels. Despite the fact that we had doctors suffering burnout, nurses suffering burnout, insufficient hospital beds, despite the backlog of surgeries that the doctors are struggling to play catch up. Once again, the industries of focus is construction and trades, not industries that traditionally females go into. So, in my final conclusion, I feel like it's a big opportunity missed for the government in terms of presenting a budget that will create a way forward for women. In my following videos, I'll look at all this $250 handouts and $1,500 and other little cost of living measures that the government has put in place, and I'll break it down to you specifically what it means and how it will affect you. So if you like my federal budget series, please click on subscribe and you'll get the notification to see the future videos. But in terms of what's in it for females, what's in it for moms, small business owners, disappointingly, there's not a hell lot that the government has put in place to make any real difference to offset the cost of living or to help you with recovery. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please click on the subscribe button.